The year is 1983, and the crying child is sitting timidly underneath a table, but the table is surrounded by teenagers, one of which he knows all too well, his own brother, Michael Afton. You see, this day is the crying child's birthday, but he has been dreading it for weeks now. His father, William Afton, has forced him to have his birthday party here, but he is absolutely terrified of the animatronics, something that Michael and his friends use against him and are teasing him for relentlessly. Michael drags him out from underneath the table and hauls him forward to see Fredbear. All of the music within the pizzeria slows and everything becomes tunnel vision for the crying child. And just as Michael is lifting him up towards the face of Fredbear, the crying child looks back with pleading eyes at Michael. But hold on one little second here. This location that we are at, if this is Fredbear's Family Diner, when exactly did Fredbear's open? This incident, the Bite of 83, is taking place in 1983. But that doesn't tell us when Fredbear's opened up. Well, I have found something by using the age of David Murray from Secret of the Mimic that tells us when Fredbear's opened and some of the early events of the FNAF timeline. And so let's start back at the beginning with this poster that we found from FNAF's Security Breach, Fredbear's Sing-In Show. Now, this is a location that we don't know a whole lot about. However, we can deduce what type of place this was just based off of this one piece of evidence. From what it seems like, this was some sort of location that had food, drinks, and entertainment. Now, a lot of people have tried to figure out if this was a roadside traveling act or if this was a designated restaurant location. That we cannot answer 100%. What I can tell you is that there was some sort of structure that you had to go inside to see the performance. Because right here on the poster it says, tickets sold inside, 50-cent general admission. Also, below that, we get this paragraph. Enjoy perfect entertainment for the family, with fresh, unalterated food and beverage, while being serenaded by our local singing bear, Freddy. But why does it say Freddy here? Isn't this Fredbear's Sing-In Show? So then, how do we explain this? Well, after giving it some thought and also talking to a couple other fellow FNAF theorists, there seems to be only two answers based off of the information that we have now to answer this question. The first one being it's entirely possible that the character of Freddy Fazbear has literally existed this far back and was singing alongside Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. However, the second option, which I think makes a bit more sense, is just that this literally is the original version of Fredbear, and they literally called Fredbear with a nickname as Freddy. However, even though these two answers are not 100%, I have a feeling this will come to light later. Now, I think the next thing to point out is the design of this poster and the character of Fredbear that we see singing here. Take a look at the art style and what this bear looks like. This bear appears to be a costume-like character. Take careful note of this detail, because this will help us in the future when we are talking about Fazbear Entertainment's relationship with MCM. But at this point, it seems that whoever's running this show only has access to costumes. I mean, since it's been theorized that Fredbear's Sing-In Show takes place either during the 1940s or 50s, animatronic technology was at its infancy at this point. You definitely wouldn't have full-blown walking around endoskeletons. Now let's move on to the next section of the FNAF timeline. What was Fazbear Entertainment doing between 1950 and 1970, a whole 20 years? Well, this part of the timeline is a little bit foggy, mainly because we don't get really a lot of information from any of the FNAF games about this chunk of 20 years. However, Secret of the Mimic gives us something that helps paint a picture of not only what was going on with Fazbear, but also what was going on with their connection and relationship to MCM. In Secret of the Mimic, we can find this graph chart that is showing us the overall success and sales of this company. This chart spans from 1965 to 1975, an entire 10 years of the FNAF timeline. And upon looking at this graph a little bit closer, we can actually link up its ups and downs to real in-game events from Secret of the Mimic. This part of the timeline starts with a man that we don't know the name of, but we'll call Edwin Sr. It seems he was the original founder of MCM, which is a company that specializes in creating costumes as well as marionette-like puppets and animatronics. And most likely, they have had a long-term relationship with Fazbear Entertainment, because where else would Fazbear Entertainment get their costumes from for their Fredbear's singing show? However, Murray Sr. has taken fine note that Fazbear Entertainment seems to be a little bit of a shady company, and doesn't take on complete deals with them on everything they put forward. And because of that, we can see a pretty steady amount of sales from 1965 to the end of 1967. However, as we learn in Secret of the Mimic, Murray Sr. passes away. We don't know what age he was, but we do know he had a son. A son that, while his father was still alive, was getting to know one of the employees of MCM named Fiona, and was helping his father run MCM. However, he was not expecting his father to pass away, which leads to this slight decrease of sales at the end of 1967. Now, even though the death of Murray Sr. was a shocker to Edwin, I believe he was able to keep the company stable, mainly because of a special annual event called Fall Fest. We don't know exactly when Fall Fest started, but we do have a poster showing it happening in 1970. And it's not too far out of the box to theorize that Fazbear Entertainment was using Fall Fest to their advantage as a way to test audiences with different types of costumes and early stages of animatronic technology. And this is where we really start to get into the meat of things, because Edwin and Fiona have their first child named David. Now we need to figure out how old David is, that way we can see when he was born and connect it to this graph. This will also help us designate the correct year of when Fredbear's Family Diner opened. In Secret of the Mimic, we can find an email that Edwin Murray sent out as an employee memo on December 1st. He tells everyone that all staff needs to be at the party on Saturday for his son David, meaning that the December 6th, which is the Saturday, is David's birthday. Now this is important because December 6th only falls on a Saturday in a certain select number of years. Now we can also link this birthday party to one of the 5 birthday tapes that we find in Secret of the Mimic, namely being the 5th and final tape that we find. Just watch and listen to what is said in the tape.
This is great. He's gonna love it. Fiona, did you make this?
I baked it myself for David's special day.
Well, great job. You just continue to surprise me. All right, I think we're ready. Okay, everyone hide. Fiona, go get him. I left him out at the playground.
This is the only birthday tape when Edwin Murray addresses a lot of other people in the room, telling them all to hide for David. This is also when the Mimic is mimicking Fiona. So this birthday tape has to be referring to this birthday, and unfortunately is the day when David passed away. Now, what year was December 6th a Saturday? Now, after looking into some calendars, we can find 3 years where this lines up. The year of 1980, the year 1975, and the year of 1969. Now, if David died in 1969, this would push a lot of the events of this timeline back by at least 5 years. And so it doesn't really make sense for this to be the year in which he died. Obviously, 1980 is not the case because the gameplay of Secret of the Mimic takes place in 1979. And that leaves us with the year of 1975 being the year that David passed away. However, the next question to ask is, how old was David when he died? And this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because there are 2 pieces of evidence here that contradict one another. Because the achievement that you can unlock in Secret of the Mimic for playing this part of the game has a birthday cake with 6 candles on it, and so a lot of people speculate that he was 6 years old when he passed away. However, there are only 5 birthday tapes, and nothing really to tell us that we are missing a birthday tape. And since there are actually a hard copy of 5 birthday tapes, I tend to believe the fact that he was 5 when he passed away. And this theory lines up perfectly with our net earnings chart from MCM. You see, at the end of 1970, which is most likely when David was born, we can see a slight dip in net earnings, most likely because Edwin Murray just had a son. But then we can see the net earnings bounce back up, many speculating this was when Edwin created his Cleanovac, one of his best-selling creations. But now that we have that all out of the way, let's talk about Fazbear Entertainment, the main reason for this video. When did Fazbear Entertainment open Fredbear's Family Diner? Well, by laying out the entire story of David and how old he was, I believe we can figure out exactly when Fredbear's Family Diner opened. And by using this graph, along with the birthday tapes, it gives us a clear answer. Now, many have theorized this massive spike of net earnings that started in 1973 is because of the Fazbear Project, which we've learned about from multiple email logs as well as cassette tapes throughout MCM. And this is showing the fact that Fazbear Entertainment commissioned Edwin to work on the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, which is what the R&D basement area of MCM is. However, there's one issue with that. R&D, this basement location, was not opened until 1975, giving us close to a whole 2 years from the start of the Fazbear Project to when R&D opened up. So what was going on within these 2 years? Well, I believe that it's in 1973 when Fredbear's Family Diner opened up. And I don't just think this because of this massive net earnings spike that we see in the chart, but because of something we can briefly see from David's 3rd birthday tape. Take a look.
David, Mommy's gone.
If we slow down the video just for a moment, we see this. A pizza box. But not just any pizza box, because we've seen these many times in Secret of the Mimic. This is a Fredbear's Family Diner pizza box in 1973. Because so far, this is the earliest reference that we see anywhere of Fredbear's being open. In 1975, the year that David died, in the party room, we can see the same pizza boxes in here as well. And obviously in 1979, as we're playing as Arnold, we see the posters for Fredbear's up, as well as the pizza boxes. And so I think it's very safe to assume that Fredbear's opened in 1973. And not only do I think that Fredbear's opened up in 1973, but was also the start of the Fazbear Project with the original version 1 Springlock suits. These were Springlock suits that were designed by Henry Emily originally, and then they commissioned Edwin Murray to create them for commercial use at their first pizzeria, which was Fredbear's. The popularity of this pizzeria blew up, so much so that Henry and William decided to start a franchise, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and then commissioned Edwin to also begin working on the first Freddy's location. And this is exactly why the R&D department in the basement of MCM was opened in 1975 and not around the same time when the Fazbear Project started in 1973. Because if Fredbear's Family Diner was opened prior to 1973, R&D would have opened a lot earlier. Now that we have solved the year of which Fredbear's opened up, the next section of the FNAF timeline brings us even more mystery. When did the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza open up? The first franchise location. And what is its connection to the R&D department in Secret of the Mimic? Now, before we answer this question, I do need to clarify that the way I have presented the FNAF timeline here is a little bit different than what some people might like. For instance, the FNAF 2 movie recently came out and drew our attention to this one fact. The pizzeria that had the toy animatronics in the movie was not the franchise location, it was the original. Almost kind of how I'm treating Fredbear's in my own personal timeline. There was Fredbear's Family Diner, and then Freddy Fazbear's Pizza being the franchise locations. But in the movies, that's completely different. In fact, from the films, Fredbear's Family Diner has never actually been mentioned name for name. It's only ever been Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and it's actually possible that the movies don't even have Fredbear's Family Diner. We just don't know yet. Maybe with the release of the FNAF 3 movie, it will draw more light to that. But I mostly just wanted to say this because I do know that some people do use the evidence for the movies in the games, which, really to be honest, I don't think we should do. Yes, I do believe Scott has put some things in the movies as hints to us, but I do not think everything is one-to-one with the games. So for instance, when the movies tell us that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened in 1982, we need to take that with a massive grain of salt. Especially when the novelization of the FNAF 2 movie says it opened in 1983 instead, so there are a lot of contradictions here. But that is a topic for the next FNAF Theory video. So with that, make sure you check out this video where I go through the complete timeline of Golden Freddy as an actual animatronic. I will see you all next time. Have a fantastic day.